Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Bernat Chunky Hand Crochet Pumpkin, which is a free pattern you'll find on Yarnspirations.com. To make this pattern, we're going to be using our hands, of course, so no hook needed, but it is super helpful to have things like stitch markers, and of course, you're going to need some scissors. You can see here this pumpkin is made with two colors and has a great chunky look. I used Bernat blanket in gold and malachite. You'll need 2 skeins of your main color and just a little bit of the color you can see here for the stem. First, let's take a quick look at our finished pumpkin. You can see here it is made from the bottom up. Then at the top, we add this little stem and send that tail right through to the bottom to create this great squished and puffy look. It's just a few rounds, all made with your hands, and it's very quick to work up. I'm going to be using a slightly different color to demonstrate with today, but of course you can make your pumpkins in whatever color you like. First things first, we need to come in and make a slip knot. So I'm going to come in several inches to do that since this is a big chunky yarn here. I'll get the slip knot made and pull down till it's just about the right size to get 2 fingers through. I don't want it too big or loose. I want to just be able to get my forefinger and my thumb right through that stitch. Then we're going to begin with a chain of 2. I do, after I make that slip knot, I like to turn it around so that the little tail end is facing me. Even though we're crocheting with our hands, we're going to try and follow some of those crochet rules for yarn overs and such, because it's just going to make our stitches lay a little bit nicer. So with our slip knot on our fingers, we're going to go ahead and chain 2. So we want to yarn over with our fingers, and you can see I'm just grabbing that right between my forefinger and thumb and pull that loop up on through. I want to make sure that the yarn end that's attached to my skein is the front part of that loop. You can see when I pull on it, it's the front part of that loop there that wants to move, or the left side or right side, depending on how you want to look at it right there. This is the loop that we want to be attached to our skein. So there's 1 chain. We yarn over with our hands and pull through for 2 chains. We now have 2 chains made. Now we're going to work 6 single crochets in the second chain from the hook. And this is going to get us to work in the round, so you can work into whatever part of the chain you desire. You could even just work under these top 2 loops of the V here as you work your way around, whatever works for you. I'm going to go ahead and start working in this back hump. We're going to take that loop that's on our fingers and just slide 1 or 2 fingers, whatever you can get in that chain, yarn over, pull up our loop, pull that up to the same size as our first loop, yarn over again, and pull through to finish our first single crochet. Again, we want to make sure that final loop is the right size. Now, since this is our first stitch, I'm going to go ahead and add a stitch marker. This is pretty big yarn, of course, lives right up to its name, so I'm just going to mark that front loop only so I don't break my stitch marker. So there is our first single crochet, and now we want to continue working into that chain. Go right in there again. It's going to get a little tight, so if you can only get 1 finger in there to pull your loop up and through, that's fine. Again, we want to have 2 loops. Then we yarn over and pull that loop through to finish a single crochet. So that's 2 stitches made. We've got 1, 2. We go in for our third. And you can see here, it's really starting to go around that chain. So we want to yarn over, pull that loop up and through. Yarn over again. Oop, get that tail out of the way there. It wants to jump in. Yarn over, pull through. That's 3 stitches made. And now as we come around, you can try and just work under those top 2 loops of that chain if it's a little easier here. Yarn over, pull up that loop up and through. Like I say, it's fine if you stick 1 finger in there to pull it through, but you want to make sure that those 2 loops get to be the same size before you yarn over again and finish your single crochet. Got a couple more to make. Get that loop the right size. Go into that first chain, yarn over, pull up our loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. Now we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 single crochets made. Get that one straightened out there a little bit. We've got 1 more. So right back in that same space, yarn over, pull that last loop up and through, and then we can yarn over and pull through, oops, both of those loops, there we are, to finish. Now we've made 6 single crochets, so we want to join with a slip stitch. So to join with our slip stitch, this loop doesn't need to be as big. I'm actually going to reduce it down to just 1 finger. Then I'm going to find that first stitch, the one I marked right here. There's that front loop that I've marked. I'm going to insert that finger in that stitch, yarn over, and pull that loop through, and pull that same loop right through the loop that was on my finger. Now we can pull that loop up to the size here of our fingers again, and we're all set. There's round 1 for our pumpkin. Now we're ready to make round 2. So now we're ready to begin round 2. We need to start with the chain 1. We yarn over and pull that loop up and through. There we are. And now we need to put 2 single crochets in each stitch around. So we started with 6 in round 1, and we'll have 12 in round 2. So again, we want to find that first marked stitch there. I'm going to go ahead and actually move the stitch marker out of the way so it doesn't get lost inside our stitch. There we are. And then I'm going to go right into that stitch, yarn over, pull that loop up and through. Make sure you get both of those fingers in there. Yarn over and pull through. So this is our new first single crochet for round 2. So I will put my stitch marker right in there. So there's 1. I'll go ahead and pull that loop down to the right height again for my fingers. And you can go ahead and really give this yarn a little bit of a tug. So we can go right in that same spot again for our second single crochet. So we yarn over and pull through 2. And then we're ready to move on to the second stitch. Same thing. We go in there, yarn over, pull up a loop. Make sure we get both our fingers in both of those loops there. Yarn over and pull through 2. Get that one to be the right size. Go back into that stitch for 1 more. Pull up a loop and yarn over and pull through 2. So we're just going to continue working our way around, putting 2 single crochets in each stitch of round 2. So this is what it should look like at the end of round 2 before we slip stitch. So we've just got our slip stitch to do. Again, I want to shrink that loop down a little bit here. Insert my finger right in that first stitch, yarn over, and pull that loop right through that stitch and right through the loop that was on my finger. Pull that up there again, so I've got my 2 finger size, and we're finished with round 2. Now we're ready to begin round 3, and round 3 is going to start the same way as round 2 with a chain 1. There we are. And our little stitch marker is getting lost in there. There we are. So we want to make sure that doesn't get stuck inside the pumpkin permanently. So let's go ahead and move this out of the way. And we'll begin our repeat for round 3. We're going to put 1 single crochet in the next stitch and then 2 double crochets in the stitch after that, and repeat that all the way around. So first things first, we have 1 single crochet in the first stitch. Get that loop up there and pull that nice up and high. There we are. Now we can put that stitch marker in this first stitch, like so. And then we're going to do 2 double crochets in the very next stitch. So if you haven't double crocheted with your hands before, this is a lot of fun. And it's just like the double crochet you're used to doing with your hook. So let me pull up a little bit more yarn here from my skein. We do run through this yarn pretty quickly with this project. There we go. So to make our double crochet, we're going to first yarn over with our yarn before we go into the stitch. So we've got the active loop on our hands right here. We yarn over, hold this yarn in back out of the way, find that next stitch, get your finger or fingers in there, yarn over again, and pull up that loop. Now you'll want to see here we have 3 loops on our hands. We've got the first loop, the yarn over, and the one we just pulled up through that stitch. So we want to try and squish those back as best we can so we can yarn over 1 more time and pull that loop through just the first 2 loops on our fingers. Now with 2 loops left, we yarn over again and pull through those 2 loops. And that is how you make a double crochet with your fingers. So now we need to do that 1 more time in the same stitch. So you can go ahead and push that loop a little bit back if you need to. Yarn over, go right back into that same stitch, yarn over and pull up that loop. Again, you can use just 1 finger if needed to get it pulled up through there. But we want to take our time and get our 3 loops the same size here. Push those back a little bit, yarn over again, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the last 2 loops. Now we've made 2 double crochets in that stitch, and we've made our repeat once. So now we need to do that same set of stitches again, repeating all the way around. So we go to the next stitch and we do a single crochet. So we go right in there and pull up a loop. Got 2 loops on our hand. We yarn over and pull through 2. Then we need to do 2 double crochets in the next stitch. Yarn over first, go into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Get that thumb back in there so they can be nice and all the same size. Yarn over again, pull through just the first 2 loops. Pull that loop up to the same size, yarn over, and pull through the last 2 loops. Let's do that one more time together. We're going to yarn over, pull up a little bit more of the yarn here. As you can see, like I say, we run through it pretty quickly. Yarn over again, go back into that same stitch, yarn over and pull up our loop. Get those loops to the same size, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2. So we just repeat that 1 single crochet, 2 double crochets, 1 single crochet, 2 double crochets, all the way around, so that at the end of round 3, you should have a total of 18 stitches. Now I'm ready to finish up round 3 with our slip stitch, but you can see our pumpkin has really grown with the addition of those double crochets. So we're going to go ahead, shrink that loop again, really carefully there at the top of that last double crochet. Insert, yarn over, and pull that loop through the stitch and the loop. There we are. Pull that stitch marker a little forward so it doesn't get lost. And now we're ready to begin round 4. Rounds 4 and 5 are both exactly the same, and they're both worked even. We're going to be working the same type of stitch into each stitch. So where you've worked a single crochet, we work a single crochet, and where you worked a double crochet, you work a double crochet. But again, just 1 stitch in each stitch. So let's start again with our chain 1 and get that stitch marker out of the way for the moment. And we started with a single crochet, so we work a single crochet right in the top there. And of course, we want to move up our stitch marker right into that front loop there, so it's nice and marked. And then we've got 2 double crochets, so we work a double crochet in each of those stitches. Pull up those loops, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. Then we go to the next stitch. It's another double crochet. Yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. And that's our repeat for all the way around. Single crochet in the next stitch, double crochet in the next, double crochet in the next. Continue that all the way around for rounds 4 and 5. Now, sometime in rounds 4 or 5, you're likely to run through your first skein of yarn. To add the second skein, you've got a couple of different options. You can simply use a bit of matching thread and a sewing needle to sew those 2 ends together and keep going as if it was 1 strand. Alternatively, you can finish 1 stitch with the new yarn and leave those ends on the inside. So let's go ahead and demo that now. The next stitch I need to make in pattern here is a single crochet. So I'm going to go into that stitch and pull up my loop. But rather than finishing with that yarn, I'm going to let that tail fall to the inside of my pumpkin. I'm going to pick up my new yarn. And I'm simply going to yarn over and pull through with the new one here. There we are. And I'll let that end tail fall to the inside as well. Then if I'd like, I can knot those together right on the inside of my pumpkin. Then I can simply continue on crocheting around with the new yarn. Now we're ready for round 6, and we're going to start decreasing for the top of our pumpkin. So we start again with a chain 1, and then we're going to single crochet in that first stitch again. So make sure we don't lose that stitch marker there. Go into our first stitch and make our first single crochet. There we are. I'll get that right in that front loop of our first stitch again. There we are. Now what we need to do is double crochet 2 together, and that's going to be our repeat. Single crochet in the single crochets, double crochet 2 together in those double crochets. So we've got our 2 double crochets here. Now we're going to do our decrease. So to do that, we yarn over with our yarn again, just like we would for a double crochet. Go into that next stitch, yarn over and pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through 2. But we're going to go ahead and give that a little tug and stop with those 2 loops left on our hook. or rather on our hand, I should say. Push those loops back a little bit, yarn over again, go into the next stitch, yarn over again, and pull up a loop. This can be a little tricky. This is a lot of loops on your fingers. You should have 4 of them total. Our first active loop, that loop left over from the first double crochet we started, our next yarn over, and the loop we just pulled up through that stitch. So we yarn over and pull through the first 2 of those. That leaves us with 3 loops left on our hook, or rather on our hand, and yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops to finish off that double crochet 2 together. So we've turned those 2 stitches, it's got 2 legs, but it comes up and it's only got 1 top V there. So we've made a single crochet and a double crochet 2 together. And we continued that pattern all the way around so that at the end of round 6, we're back down to 12 stitches. As you can see, after round 6, the sides of our pumpkin are pulling in. So we have just 1 more round of crochet left, round 7, where we're going to be single crocheting 2 together all the way around. We finished round 6 with 12 stitches, so we'll finish round 7 with 6 stitches. So first things first, we still need to chain 1 and move that stitch marker out of our way. And now we're going to single crochet 2 together in each pair of stitches. So we first go into the first stitch and yarn over and pull up our loop. 2 loops left on the hook. Normally to finish our single crochet, we'd yarn over and pull through, but we're going to go to the next stitch and pull up a loop from there as well. With these 3 loops left on our hook, our active loop and a loop from each stitch, we yarn over and pull through all 3 loops to finish our first single crochet 2 together. So I'm going to grab that stitch marker again and give that one its own marker right there. So let's do that one more time. We're going to continue, as I say, doing this all the way around. We go to the next stitch, pull up a loop, go to the next stitch, pull up a loop. Get our 3 loops on our hand here, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops. Continue that all the way around until you have a total of 6 stitches made in round 7. As you can see, I've finished round 7 and joined with a slip stitch. Just 6 stitches were made for round 7. So now what I want to do is cut my yarn, but I want to make sure to leave a really long tail, about 24 inches or so, because we're going to use this tail to gather up this final round and do the final bit of assembly for our pumpkin. So if you've got plenty of yarn left over, you can even add a little bit more, just as long as you've got at least 24 inches left. So the last things you're going to want to do to the pumpkin before we set it aside for a minute are pull through that tail end all the way so that that last loop can't pull back out. There we are. And then we can go ahead and take that stitch marker out and set it aside. Now you can set this whole pumpkin base aside and we're going to make the stem. Now we're ready to make our stem in our contrasting color. You're going to start with an 18-inch length. It doesn't have to be exactly 18 inches, but at least 18 inches is a good idea. What we're going to do is we're going to take this length of yarn, bring our ends together like so that it's folded in half. Then we just want to twist these 2 halves together. You can sit there and do it like this. My favorite method is I stick my finger right in the fold and just twirl my hand. We want to get a really good twirl on here so that these 2 strands are twisted really nicely. You'll notice in my other hand, I'm holding those 2 ends securely so that can't come undone. Once I've got a bunch of twists on there, I can fold it in half again. And you'll see when I do that, it really wants to curl upon itself. So to secure it, I'm going to take those 2 ends and just slip it right through that first fold where I did my twisting. We want to get both of those ends pulled nice and tight through there. And then we can just use our fingers to really encourage that twist. And then we're ready to add our stem to our pumpkin. Now for this section, our final assembly, it's really helpful to have a Susan Bates finishing needle or other large yarn needle. However, if you need to do this part with your fingers, you can absolutely do it that way too. I'm going to go ahead though and send the tail end of my pumpkin, that final cut end, right through the finishing needle so it's all set to go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this long tail to start gathering this top closed. And as I do that, I'm going to add the stem. So let's get started with our gathering. To do this, I simply like to go through each stitch from the outside to the inside and pull the yarn tight. So there's our first one. It's not going to gather with just one. We've got to go do a couple. So there's the next stitch. And just start really pulling those stitches together a little bit here. Find the next stitch, Stitch number 3. Again, I like to go from the outside in and give, again, a good tug on that yarn. Start pulling those stitches together. We'll go ahead and do our 4th one. Give that another tug. Our 5th one. And as you go through that last stitch there, we go ahead and pull that one tight. And again, we want to gather up the top of our pumpkin here. There's our little opening. We are going to go ahead and insert the stem in our pumpkin. We want to make sure those ends are pulled through that fold, so we've got our twist nice and secured, and put those cut ends in that first fold down inside the pumpkin. Then we can simply take our end and send it right through that stem to secure it in place. You can take another stitch through a couple of your last round stitches here if you like to gather that up as well. I think I'll go ahead and just kind of go through this one right here so I can make sure that that stem is on there nice and secure. And gently pull that on through here. And again, if you don't have one of these finishing needles, you can use your fingers to sort of do this by hand a little bit, but it's a little easier if you have the finishing needle. There we are. Make sure the twist on our pumpkin looks good. And when you have your stem nice and secured, then we have just one more thing to do. We're going to take that end of our yarn and send it all the way through to the bottom. You'll notice I didn't stuff this pumpkin at all. There's no stuffing. It's just the bulk of the yarn itself that creates this great shape. But sending this last bit through the bottom of the pumpkin can really help give it some more life and fun. So we just want to find that bottom section there. It doesn't have to be exactly the center if you can't quite find it. Use your fingers and really gently pull that tail end all the way through your pumpkin. Then you can weave that end in on the bottom and you're all finished with your Bernat Chunky Hand Crochet Pumpkin. So here again is that finished pumpkin. The size of your hands and the size of the loops you make with your fingers will determine the size of your finished pumpkin quite a bit. So you can play with the size of your loops and make it all your own in your own favorite colors of Bernat Blanket Big. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.